This is the Multiorgasmic Mama, the podcast for high-achieving moms to have sex worth putting the energy in for. I'm Tilly Storm, a holistic sex and intimacy coach, and it's my mission to help you want sex again, to have better orgasms, and to feel confident and sexy so you experience more pleasure in the bedroom and beyond. Welcome back, mamas. It's Tilly Storm, and today I am so excited to talk about with you a topic that's so near and dear to my heart. There are many sex coaches, sex educators, and teachers out there that love to teach sex techniques and tips and tricks and all of these things to help people have a better sex life. And while these things have their place in the world, I truly believe that it's the deep integration and healing work that makes the lasting difference in people's lives and how they experience their relationship in their body, living in their body, and how they experience their sexuality. And what I mean by that is a lot of the inner child work that we do with clients that I love to work with. I love working with people at the deepest level. Many of the clients that I work with have done lots of therapy before. They have researched all of the things. They've been working on this for a long time, and they're tired of things not really panning out the way they hoped. A lot of them are even therapists themselves. We've worked with therapists, we've worked with other sex coaches and educators, and this work that I do, this inner child healing and integration, is one of the key components to really transforming someone's experience of their body and their sexuality. Why? It's because unless you have gone in and dove into the stories of the past, the stories that your inner child got taught, the conditioning that she was raised with, the thoughts, beliefs, and stories that she was raised with, unless you are going in and questioning what you were taught, what your story is, and what you truly believe, you are always defaulting to a younger version's story of yourself. If you really want to change how you experience sex and pleasure and how you feel in your body, then going into these stories means going into the younger part of you that adopted the stories in the first place. It means really questioning, what is the validity of these stories to me anymore? People always say they want to change. They always say they want to transform their life. They always say they want a better sex life. They always say they want the relationship of their dreams. They always say they want to meet their twin flame. But do they actually do it? No. Most of the time, they don't. They don't do it because they aren't going to the core of the issues in the first place. The core of the issue isn't that you don't know how to have better sex. Because if this were the issue, you would already be having epic sex and pleasure. But this isn't the issue. We live in the information era, okay? We live in a world where you can literally Google, or I use DuckDuckGo. You can DuckDuckGo anything, and you can find the answer to your question, okay? You can Google, you can DuckDuckGo, you can whatever, find out how to have better sex any day. It's so easy. You can just go on omgyes.com, see how other women do it. You can go watch porn and see how people do it there. You can watch ethical porn and see how people do it that way. If that were the problem, you would have already solved it. You don't have epic sex and you don't experience pleasure in the bedroom and beyond because your inner child, these younger parts and pieces of you, it could be other parts, all right? I speak of the inner child because this is the most common one that I see pop up for people when I first start working with them. There are other parts like an inner critic that I often see can be a great challenge to connect with, to heal and integrate the inner critic so that you can move into an empowered place and an empowered identity around your sex life and relationships. But true change and transformation, to have epic sex and pleasure, means that you get to begin to question what you believe. What are your stories? What is the operating system going on in your body mind? In your mind, I say body mind. That literally means the physical sensations and emotions that you feel in your body and why you are experiencing them. So based on a past story or belief that you adopted years ago about what pleasure, sex, and relationships mean. For the majority of us, we were not shown a healthy example of what sex, pleasure, and relationships looks like. We weren't modeled what that looks like. So we generally all have an inner wounded child, either from when we were a baby or when we were 3 or when we were 7, and sometimes in our early teenage years. That can be so challenging because her belief about what's true about sex, pleasure, orgasms, relationships is so fucked up. Her belief is so messed up and based on a story that she experienced back then that we continue to live out the pattern until we go in and we question it and we begin to become aware. Oh my God, wow. My inner child, my inner 6-year-old is literally running my sex life and my relationship and my experience of sex. I always call this the unsexy part of sexuality work. It's not so sexy, but it can be done in pleasure and fun and play. All right. So I don't want you to think that, oh my God, Tilly is saying in order for me to have great sex, I have to go do all this inner child healing and integration. In a way, yes, I am. I absolutely am. Because I know this is what changes things for the better. Any true change and transformation requires identifying as an empowered identity inside of you, not an unconscious one that's running the show, keeping you experiencing the same patterns in your sex life and relationship that you are. I know this is what gets to happen in order for a transformation to happen in your life. But what I want you to know about this work is that it does not have to be like, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck in this inner child healing forever. And it has to be so grueling. And I have to go into the past and rehash all of these things that I feel like I've already rehashed so many times. No. Yes, we get to do it, but we literally get to shift it and to change it in literally 30 minutes. That's how long it takes me to guide you through inner child integration and healing. Now, the work that you're doing after our sessions, that's a little different, okay? That takes some practice. That takes a couple of weeks. Sometimes, at the most, I've seen is a couple of months. And then when it's done, it's done. And then it's over. And then you're like, oh my God, I can actually step into my inner sex goddess. I can actually be this empowered version of my sexuality. I can actually be someone who, the queen of relationships, the one who can attract my ideal partnership and relationship, because I'm no longer showing up in my life based on my inner 6-year-old's ideas of what relationship is. That, well, every time I get in a relationship, I'm abandoned. Maybe dad left when you were 6. Well, guess what? You probably had a huge abandonment wound that your inner child is carrying, that you're unconsciously showing up, behaving from this place of complete fear every time you meet a guy. So yes, it really does require going to the depths. But going to the depths doesn't have to be a long, arduous journey. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it doesn't have to be done without some fun and play. All right. So inner child healing is the crux of changing and transforming your sex life, your relationship with your body, with your sexuality, and with a partner. Because it is her thoughts, beliefs, stories, emotions that you are showing up with until you go in and begin to question them, like I said. And the healing happens when you begin to become aware by certain journal prompts that I often give clients and reparenting inner child practices that I give clients. You begin to become aware of how much this younger self is actually running your life in these areas and how much you are behaving as this part of you. And then eventually you start to see, oh my God, like, holy shit, it all makes sense. I have literally been showing up in my sex life, not able to experience the type of pleasure or orgasms I want, or I've been showing up in dating, not being able to attract the kind of guy I want because of her stories, your younger self stories, beliefs, thoughts, emotions, all of these things. So once the awareness is there, Then a shift gets to happen. The shift gets to happen when you begin to reparent this younger part of you. You begin to draw a boundary with her, just like you would your own children. So if your children were constantly waking you up on a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, you'd probably be like, yo, dude, you gotta stop. No. Like, we're not doing this. This is my day to rest. It's my day to sleep in. And no one's waking mama up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So you would probably draw a boundary with your child and say, okay, we're not doing this anymore. Here's what you're going to do instead. You're going to go make yourself some cereal. I'll show you how. And you're going to watch cartoons or whatever kids do these days. I don't know, watch YouTube. That's probably more of an accurate statement. So you're going to go do these things instead. Okay, so if your own child were doing things that weren't cool with you, you would draw a boundary. You would teach them what to do instead. That is exactly what you learn to do with your inner child and her stories and her beliefs and her emotions and thought patterns when it comes to sex, pleasure, relationships, all of the things. Okay, so you're literally learning to draw a boundary with her and say, okay, hey, sweet little 6-year-old me, I love you so much. Thank you so much for everything you've been through. Thank you for protecting me with your thoughts and beliefs and stories. I know you never want to experience that thing again. I know you never want to feel abandoned. And because we've been, operating in our adult life from this version of us, we've made sure we couldn't be abandoned. We made sure we couldn't be abandoned by never attracting a guy we cared about being abandoned by, right? So we've never had our person. We never drew an our person because we were scared of being abandoned by that person. So it's about drawing a boundary with her and being like, okay, I understand that happened to you, and I am no longer available for this story. I am changing this story. I'm changing the pattern, and I am stepping into the motherfucking queen of relationship that I know I am. And what does that look like? That looks like literally embodying the part of you that does know how to create the relationship you want, or the pleasure you want, or the sexual experiences you want. Because I guarantee you that there is a part in you. There is something inside of you. And you know what? If you think that there's not, you can always create it, which is the freaking beauty of this work in the first place, is that you might not think that there is a sex goddess living inside of you. You might not think that there is a queen of relationship living inside of you. And maybe there isn't. Maybe you have never experienced great sex. Maybe you have never experienced an epic relationship. That doesn't mean you don't get to have one. That means you get to create an identity inside of you to show up as, to really anchor into and to embody, to show up in your life, behave from that part of you, to speak as that part of you, to make decisions as that part of you, instead of the unconscious, wounded inner child part of you with her wounded, outdated stories, thought patterns, beliefs, and emotions about pleasure, sex, and relationship. So when you begin to become aware, you eventually get sick of seeing how much power and authority of choice you have given your inner child to run your sex life and relationships. And then you start to say, okay, I'm done with this. We've had enough here. It's time to draw a boundary with you. It's time to teach you how to go make the cereal for yourself, for the example that I gave you earlier. Or it's time to learn how to watch a YouTube channel until I get up, right? So it's about drawing that boundary and then constantly reparenting her, meaning that you're constantly reinforcing the new story, the new belief, the new thought pattern that you want to begin to embody and to behave as. So that means having that conversation with her multiple times every time you get triggered. So for example, if a trigger happens, what is a trigger? How does it happen? Well, a trigger is, for example, let's do the relationship example. So if you are dating and you meet a guy that, could be fun, and you're going out on a date, you go on the first date, nothing sexual happens, and he treats you really great. And then you go out on a second date and you're like, okay, I'm starting to feel it here. And then you go on a third date and it's, the chemistry's starting to build and you're like, okay, there's a possibility here. And then all of a sudden he doesn't call or text for a day and you spiral. If you have an abandonment wound, that is the trigger, okay? So you have some sort of wound that is going to get triggered by someone else's behavior. If you are still being triggered, that's because you have unhealed and unintegrated younger inner child pieces of yourself with a particular story, thought pattern, or belief about what you're experiencing that is calling, that is begging for you to look at her, to pay attention, to understand where she's coming from, because she wants to be healed. She wants to have that conversation that never happened. She wants to have the parent that comes in and says, oh, honey, I so understand what you're going through. I so get how terrible this is for you. This experience of your dad leaving when you're 6 years old. Like, I totally understand how you could be just completely devastated and feel how you must not be good enough because daddy left or whatever it is, right? But again, this is her story. It's not the truth. So when you begin to show up to reparent her, to tell her the truth, you can't go and change the past. You can't change what happened, but you can change how she experiences it. It's called timeline hopping. It's like going back in time and shifting the story. So the story no longer has charge over your life anymore. So going in and saying, I understand. I get it. What do you need to feel safe? What do you need from me? How can I support you? It's literally like having a conversation with your own child, or if you don't have a child, with any other person that's important in your life. How would you converse with them? I get it. I understand. How can I support you? What can I do for you? How can I make this better? And here's the truth. You are so worthy. You are so worthy. And guess what? Dad leaving had nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with you not being worthy of his love. He was just in a really bad situation and he didn't know how to care for himself. He didn't know what to do. He was doing the best he could at the time, right? So you're actually having this conversation with your inner child to reparent her and tell her what's actually true based on what you know now. And this is where she begins to be healed. She begins to not have so much charge of your life. She stops being triggered because she's like, oh, right. Dad didn't leave because, I wasn't worthy. Dad didn't leave because it had anything to do with me. Dad left because for whatever. And it doesn't even matter, right? So as long as you're having this conversation repeatedly every time you experience a trigger with your inner child, you're literally reparenting her. You are timeline hopping and changing the story in real time. You are changing the story so you don't have to continue to live that story. And once the trigger stops, guess what you get to get? You get to begin to step into the empowered identity that you choose, that you create for yourself, or that you already draw upon because you already know what's inside of you. So you might have a part of you that totally knows your worth. She might already live inside of you. It might be hard for you to connect with her, but as you do more of this work, you begin to connect with her more and more, and then you start to give her the power and the authority of choice to make decisions and to behave from this part of you and not the inner 6-year-old who's afraid of being abandoned, okay? So again, it's becoming aware of how the inner child is showing up in your sex life and relationships, and then creating the boundaries with her, and then empowering a new identity instead, whether it's something already inside of you or something that you want to create for yourself. And this is how lasting change and transformation happens, my loves. And it doesn't have to be a whole long, arduous journey. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I have to go into the past and I have to go uncover all these things. Yes, for like literally 30 minutes. That's about it. And then you get to have continual conversations with this part of you until it no longer gets triggered and there's no longer any charge around what's showing up in your experience of pleasure and sex. So, my loves, this is the depth that we go to. This is the depth that I take people to. You can learn all the tips and the tricks in the world, and you can learn all the sex techniques that Cosmo can possibly dish to you. And it is not going to matter if you have wounded parts of you that are begging for you to heal and to integrate them. If you're being triggered, they are begging for you to pay attention, to look at them, to see what is it that still gets to be healed and loved, because that's what's being called for. And when you give this to yourself through the depth, through the work that we do, then it no longer has a charge on your life, and you're fucking free. You are free to create whatever you want, whatever story you want about sex and pleasure and relationships. Once this part is healed, you're free. You're liberated. Yes, mama. So if this is something that you want to do, then I want to encourage you to head to the link in the show notes and apply for Sensually Embodied Woman. I know I'm always saying this, but this is because this program is absolutely epic, because it does go to the depths. There's so many women on here that have shared their stories about being and going through this program. And all of them have received such amazing experiences of healing and integration and being more connected to themselves, learning who they truly are inside. So we have a new group starting very soon, the week of July 18th, and we want to get applications in for this group no later than July 15th. So get your application in, book the call. That's all that means is when you hit that apply button on the page in the show notes, you hit the apply now button. You're going to choose a date and a time that works for you to talk with me. And then we're going to go over what you're currently experiencing in your sex life and relationships, so I can get a real good diagnosis of where you're currently at, what you're experiencing. And then we're going to dive into what you're wanting to create for yourself in these areas. And once we're clear on that, then I'm going to know if this is something that I can actually help you with, and if this is what this program can help you with as well. So after we determine what you're wanting to create, what your goals and desires are, we're going to talk about what the blocks and obstacles are exactly. And I'm going to tell you what they are based on what I've heard from you. So whether or not you join the program, you're going to walk away from this call knowing exactly what your specific blocks and obstacles are and what you're going to need to do to get past them so that you can experience epic sex and pleasure. So once we go through blocks and obstacles, if I feel like it's a good fit, I'll offer you a spot in the program. Booking the call doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get into the program. Some people, it's just not a good fit for them. You're not really there yet to go to this depth that I take people. And maybe there's a different type of program that I can recommend to you that would be more beneficial to you at the time. So you book the call, and once you choose the time, you're going to be asked to answer several questions. These questions are going to help me see where you're at. So if you give me a one-word answer, I'm not going to know what to expect when we get on the call, and I don't have much to go off of when we get there. I'm the only one that looks at these questions, so you don't have to worry about, oh my God, who's going to see this? Because I'm the only one who's going to see it. Answer the questions to the best of your ability, thoroughly and completely, and I will be more prepared to guide you through the call and to really assess if the Sensually Embodied Woman is the right program for you. All right, my loves, thank you so much for tuning in today, for being willing and open to do this absolutely incredible and amazing work of really healing and integrating our inner child who is always unconsciously showing up in our sex life and relationship until we become conscious. Are you ready to get conscious so you can truly change and shift this for good? If so, go apply at the link in the show notes now, and I'll see you on the other side, hot mama. Bye. Enjoying this content? Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the Multiorgasmic Mama podcast today. And don't forget to spread the love by sharing this with a friend.